back to the grind with the only free MMA channel that fucking matters, full-time MMA. And it's story time, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to introduce everybody to Tanya Evinger and the story of Tanya Evinger and why this shit right here is kinda epic. Okay, a lot of people probably aren't familiar with Tanya Evinger. She is the Invicta Bantamweight champion. Now, we'll get into the story of Tanya Evinger after we get into the main point of this video, of this fucking news, whatever the fuck we're gonna call this shit. This fucking topic. The main event of this topic is Chris Cyborg's opponent, Megan Anderson. It was forced to pull out of UFC 214 for the official, not the inaugural, but for the official women's featherweight championship. Now, Megan Anderson is who I wanted to see Cyborg fight. That is the fight a lot of people wanted to see versus Cyborg. But unfortunately, I don't even know why. That's because I gotta seen the Tanya Evinger. That's the story of Tanya Evinger was what's more interesting to me here. I mean, I don't know why Megan Anderson had to pull out, but she had to pull out. That's what fucking matters. Megan Anderson had to pull out, so we don't get to see that fight yet. I'm sure that fight's coming in the future. It doesn't even matter when. We know Cyborg's getting a title shot. If she wins this title here, which she likely will, we'll see Megan Anderson first, Chris Cyborg for the title soon. So, let's get into the story of Tanya Evinger. Because now that Megan Anderson has stepped out, Tanya Evinger has stepped in to face Chris Cyborg for the featherweight women's UFC championship. Who is Tanya Evinger? As I said earlier, she is the women's bantamweight. Mind you, that's the 135-pound champion in Invicta. And you might say, what? Why is she fighting someone from Invicta? Is this girl even game? Cyborg's gonna fucking murk her. And now, the part of that is true. Cyborg's gonna murk her. That most likely is true. But is she game? Yes. Let me tell you a little bit about Tanya Evinger that I know. I don't know her whole story, but I know a little bit about it. So Tanya Evinger, she's actually, if I'm not mistaken, because I've seen some of her interviews and stuff, and heard about her on like MMA podcasts and such. So she's actually a really good fighter in Invicta, bantamweight. She actually should already be in the UFC. But for some reason, she keeps defending her belt over there, and the UFC won't sign her. And now, a lot of people make jokes about Tanya Evinger and say she looks like Meth Head from Breaking Bad, or she looks like, I don't know, flat tire around her waist. I was just reading some comments and shit earlier. I'm not going to get on here and bash her and shit, but as far as marketability goes, it goes a long way in the UFC. I don't know if she's older. I don't know how old she is as far as her literal age, but she does look older, so I would assume she's older, like 35 or higher. She might be younger and just look that way, I'm not sure, because I don't have all of her stats, as I said. But this is the story, because the story is, why hasn't the UFC signed Tanya Evinger yet? She's been defending her championship over there, and okay, here's a storyline about Tanya Evinger as well, a mini storyline. It's like all the women that Tanya Evinger defends her belt against, I don't have her record up right now, I'll probably pull that up while I speak. But all of the women she defends her title against, like right after they lose to Tanya Evinger, they get signed by the UFC. So it's like the UFC keeps signing these girls that Tanya Evinger beats, but they don't sign Tanya Evinger, who's clearly the better fighter and the champion who deserves to be in the UFC, but they keep signing her opponents that she beats. And so we don't know if it's because of something in the background, maybe she pissed someone in the UFC off, or maybe they were like, hey, we'll sign you for this little bit amount, you gotta earn your way, and she was like, fuck you. I'll go. I was gonna make a joke about I'll go because she looks like someone I know. She looks like one of my friend's mothers, and this lady like drinks beers and she's hilarious. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But so Tanya Evinger, it's like either it's because she's not marketable, or it's because she pissed someone in the UFC off. Now, let's elaborate on piss someone in the UFC off. Because look, the UFC has now signed Tanya Evinger. They didn't sign her at bantamweight, which is where she should be fighting. They said, you want to come to the UFC, huh? Your first fight's going to be against Cyborg. damn. Ooh. This is like not even a sacrifice, because you sacrifice somebody you care about, you know, like whenever they were putting like who was going to be fighting Cyborg. It wasn't Valerie Leacher, no, it was one of these ladies. It wasn't, I'm thinking of her because she was at Bellator, but whoever was just scheduled to fight Cyborg and had to pull out, that was going to be like a sacrifice, because, you know, she was already in the UFC. But this lady, it's like the UFC would not sign her for some reason. I don't know if it's because her marketability, they didn't think they could market her. But if anybody that's dominant, well, I can't say that. Anyone that's dominant you can market, because Demetrius Johnson. There's fighters that are dominant that you can't market, so maybe that's not it. Maybe her fighting style isn't that exciting. I have seen a few of her highlights. I know she grinds people out. It looks like grappling-wise, she goes for a lot of submissions, which helps me lead to believe she's probably not going to beat Cyborg, because if you're a grappler or someone that goes for submissions, and it's a little harder to do that against the bigger fighter. As in, we just seen that over this weekend. I forgot who it was, but someone was. Oh yeah, that was why I predicted Johnny Hendricks to lose to Tim Boetsch, because he's a grappler. He wants to try and, you know, grind on guys, and that it works, but it works less effective against guys or girls that have weight on you. So in this, since she's a natural bantamweight and she seems like a grinder, you're going to be going against Cyborg, who it's hard for her to make 145. You make 135, and it's hard for her to make 145. So she's just bigger than Tanya Evinger. So if you're a grinder, it's going to just be harder for you to grind on someone that much bigger than you. So that's why I still think Cyborg's probably going to demolish Tanya Evinger. But it's just interesting, the story. The UFC wouldn't sign Tanya Evinger. And now, here you go. But you don't get signed at 135. You get to fight Cyborg. Damn. And then what happens after the Cyborg fight? Do they say, yeah, sorry, you weren't ready, and cut her? And say, yeah, you weren't ready, and send her back to Invicta? Or do they let her move down to bantamweight? If they let her move down to bantamweight, that would be interesting. That would be a new bantamweight contender right there. And she would damn near already be a star. She lost to Cyborg. No one's really going to hold that against her. She was the smaller girl. She moved down weight classes. And now you're in the UFC finally. So there's a lot of story behind Tanya Evinger and her plight with the UFC. If she gets in here, they put her up against Cyborg. Maybe that whoever she pissed off, maybe that makes them even. Hey, you pissed me off. You came in here and, you know, she must have pissed off El Jefe or somebody, matchmaker, something. Hey, yeah, we'll sign you, but you'll take this fight on short notice. And she said, no thanks. And maybe she pissed someone off. So now they're feeding her to Cyborg, and so maybe after that she'll get her shot at bantamweight, which would definitely be interesting. I would definitely love to see her fights at bantamweight. So now you know a little bit about the story of Tanya Evinger. I don't know what else to say, man. Fuck it. It is what it is. Let the hitters know what the fuck you tell me in the comments.